Okay, I think we'll go ahead and get started for today's question and answer session. So today is May the 13th. This will be our second round of question and answers. So we'll just kind of go through some of the questions that have been submitted and go ahead and give my answers for those. Record this for those who can't watch it live, and will hopefully be a good resource for you as we move forward. So one of the questions was, what is a macronutrient and what is a micronutrient? Okay, so this is kind of a big question in nutrition. So macronutrients, like they say, are kind of the larger categories. And then within the macro, we break down into what's known as micronutrients. So there's three basic macronutrients: proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. Alcohol is also considered a macronutrient, and ketones are now kind of the fifth macronutrient. So each one's a little different. They serve a little different purposes, and any food is based out of these kind of five macronutrients. And so first is protein. So most of us are familiar with protein. So protein comes mostly from meats. It can also be found in nuts. Some plants have some proteins in them as well. So just depends on the source that you're getting it from. Proteins get broken down into amino acids. And amino acids get utilized to build muscle tissue and also for energy and some bodily functions. So proteins are one of the main macronutrients. Again, they're the building blocks for muscle tissue, organ tissue, those kind of major processes in the body. So a protein is 4 calories per gram. And the good thing about protein is it requires your body to burn calories in order to break it down into those amino acids. So about 30% of any calories you eat in protein automatically require you to utilize more energy to break them down. So basically, eating a piece of steak, in order to break that down for your body to utilize it, say if it's a 100-calorie piece of meat, 30 of those calories get burned up in just breaking that steak down. Whereas if you eat 100 calories of a high glycemic carbohydrate, such as white bread, it gets processed very fast, does not require any additional calories for your body to break that down and utilize it. So one good benefit with protein is the body's ability to require some metabolism, some thermogenesis to break that down and assimilate the amino acids. So again, protein building blocks, 4 calories per gram, gets broken down into amino acids. Cool thing about it is about 30% of the calories the intake required to break it down. So just increasing your protein intake or swapping some of your carbohydrates for proteins can actually require your body to burn more calories just to digest that meal. So adding more protein in typically helps with better body composition, not just because of the ability to build lean body mass, but also the body's ability to burn those extra calories. If you eat too much protein, though, your body can break protein down into glucose through a process known as gluconeogenesis. So if you're eating too much protein, then the extra can be converted into glucose and then raise your insulin and all that stuff. It's a longer, more complicated process than just eating a carbohydrate, but it can result in gluconeogenesis. So, okay. So if you have any more questions on protein, let me know. One of my goals, usually when I'm working with a client on the exit of the diet, is we want to build up to where we're getting about 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight in a reasonable amount. So if you weigh 150 pounds, that is 150 grams of protein. If you weigh 200 pounds, it's 200 grams, and so forth. So protein, as far as body composition goes, is probably your best friend. So, okay, carbohydrates. So carbohydrates come from vegetables, fruits, and breads, pastas. Again, part of nuts and seeds. So a carbohydrate is also 4 calories per gram. And there's different types of carbohydrates. There's what's called low glycemic and there's high glycemic. So low glycemic means that it doesn't elevate blood sugar very high. High glycemic carbohydrates have a tendency to raise blood sugar higher much quicker. So there's kind of a glycemic index on carbohydrates. Like the higher, the faster the body converts that into glucose and utilizes it for energy. And again, too much energy, too much glucose can cause the body to excrete insulin and store the extra energy into fat. So again, carbohydrates are crucial if you're exercising really hard. There's no such thing as an essential carbohydrate. There's essential amino acids that come from protein, and there's essential fatty acids that come from fats. But nowhere is there an essential carbohydrate. So carbohydrates can help if you're like an athlete, really pushing a lot of volume, if you're really glycolytic or doing like sprinting, things that make your heart race a lot, require a lot of fast energy, that glucose can really provide a lot of benefit for those type of individuals. But as far as like body composition and weight loss, carbohydrates tend to be your least friendly macronutrient. If we can control carbohydrates, we can kind of control the body's storage response. So again, it kind of goes back to that refrigerator freezer analogy. I think that is a great analogy with how the body works. Again, the muscle tissues and the liver, they're the refrigerator. Once that gets full of energy, then the body's forced to store it as fat in the freezer, which is the fat cells. So if we're only getting enough glucose to fill the fridge but not get to the freezer, that's kind of the sweet spot. So again, any excess glucose that your body, that your muscle tissues cannot store, will get converted into fat and will get put into fat cells to be used later on. So if you can control carbohydrate intake, you can typically control body composition a little bit better. So, and again, it all depends on activity, depends on your, how active your job is every day, how many calories you burn, your metabolism, your genetic disposition towards foods. Everybody's different. Everybody's macronutrients are different requirements. Micronutrients are different requirements. The way people process carbohydrates can be different, proteins, fats. Everybody's got to kind of work on what works best for them. But again, excess carbohydrates or high glycemic carbohydrates tend to cause the body to go into storage mode and store those extra glycogen, glucose as body fat. So again, carbohydrates, kind of that quick energy, but you don't want too many because they get stored easily as fat. It does not take the body much to convert high glycemic carbohydrates. White bread will turn to glucose in your bloodstream just about as fast as eating sugar will turn to glucose in your bloodstream. So some carbohydrates get processed much quicker. So fats, again, fats come from all oils, butters, avocados, nuts, seeds. Again, things are made up of different composition of these macronutrients. Fats get broken down into fatty acids that then get utilized for like our brain, cell membranes, body functions. And again, any excess can be stored as fat. And a real combination to avoid is high fat, high carbohydrate. Because again, the carbohydrate can stimulate the storage response. So if you combine something that is very high glycemic, high carbohydrate with something that has a lot of fat, your body's going to go into storage mode, excrete insulin. Insulin's going to come up, grab all the fat and the extra carbohydrates, and is going to store it. It's going to store it as fat. So carbohydrates and fats are not a good combination. Should be avoided all the time. So that's one to kind of recognize and avoid. One of the differences between fats, proteins, and carbs or fats are 9 calories per gram. So proteins and carbohydrates are 4, fats are 9. So much higher content of calories per gram. So again, you don't need as much fat to hit certain calorie limits. So again, when you're starting to utilize fat for food, you kind of got to watch that, right? Because a little bit of salad dressing, olive oil, those kind of things, butter, those calories can add up pretty quick. So great to use those healthy fats, but you just kind of got to watch the calorie balance. Because ultimately, there's calories in, calories out kind of equation that goes along with food, right? So, but again, 9 calories per gram of fat. Again, fat gets broken down into fatty acids, utilized for thousands of body processes. Our cells are constantly regenerating. Your body's constantly renewing itself. So it's important to make sure we're supplying the body with good, healthy fats. Again, fatty acids are essential. We need them. Can't live without them. So you got to get them from good sources. So alcohol. Alcohol is a macronutrient, but it is the least friendly of all macronutrients. And unfortunately, for those who like to consume alcohol, there's typically gets converted into some toxins pretty quick in your body, and can become problematic for fat storage, can become problematic for hormone conversion and stress response, those kind of things. Now, a little bit, if that's something you enjoy socially, again, I think that's fine. If that's something you enjoy, something you get some social benefit out of, but just you really got to recognize there's a biological cost to consuming alcohol, and if you can mitigate that's okay. If not, it's going to cause metabolic problems for you. So just proceed with caution. Again, if it's something you enjoy occasionally, probably not a big deal. Something that's consumed with frequency, it's going to cause you some metabolic problems and could result in some pretty devastating health consequences. So if you're a man, alcohol tends to convert testosterone into estrogen, And so it can tend to take the male hormones and turn them into female hormones. So alcohol in that way is not very friendly towards men. So FYI. And then ketones. Ketones have about 5 calories per gram. Kind of again, the what happens when you break fats down into a usable food source, not just the fatty acid, but as an energy source. So again, ketones have a ton of health benefits and are a great fuel source for the body. So again, those are the breakdown. The main 3: proteins, carbohydrates, fats, and then again, alcohol and ketones could be considered the other 2 macronutrients. So I hope that kind of clarifies some of that. If you have any questions specifically to any of those macronutrients, shoot me an email or message me, and we'll get that answered for you. So micronutrients, what are those? So micronutrients, within each macronutrient, then there's kind of a micronutrient breakdown, and those are your vitamins, your minerals, and vitamin A, vitamin E, vitamin D, vitamin K, and potassium, magnesium, copper, zinc. All of those are what's known as micronutrients. And so you want to make sure you're getting a nutrient-dense food. So a lot of micronutrients within your macronutrients. So again, those are going to come from your vegetables. Those are going to come from your meats, from healthy fats. Those are going to be full of micronutrients that can give your body what you need to perform at your best. So again, that's kind of the difference. Macro is the overall, and then within that, it breaks down. Now each food is going to consist of different macro and micronutrients. It's one of the great things about logging food into MyFitnessPal is you kind of get familiar with, how many grams of protein, fat, carbohydrates different foods have, and within those foods, like how much micronutrients am I getting? And again, there's a big difference between 100 calories of bread and 100 calories of broccoli, and there's going to be a lot of difference between 100 calories of Ezekiel bread and 100 calories of Wonder Bread. There's different makeups, and so it's important to recognize how those all come together in your body. And so when you consume those macro and micronutrients have an effect on your body. So a keto diet is high fat. Why are we not consuming a lot of fat during this protocol? Okay, so again, we're getting in a state of ketosis. There's a couple ways of doing that. The typical ketogenic diet that is kind of popularized on the internet is made up of high fat, low carbohydrate, moderate protein kind of diet. So it can be anywhere from 70 to 90% fat, 20 to 10% protein, and usually 10% or lower of carbohydrate. So very low carbohydrate, again, moderate protein, very high fat diet. And what we're doing is we're running a very low fat, low carbohydrate, moderate protein protocol. And the reason for this is we want to use body fat instead of dietary fat for our protocol. We want to access your love handles and not butter to supply the fat needed for our protocol. So we're still producing ketones. We're breaking down body fat into ketone bodies, and thus are ketogenic in producing ketones, generating ketones, right? Instead of eating butter and then breaking the butter down into fatty acids and ketone bodies. So it all depends on kind of what your goals are, right? Like if you're wanting to lose weight, we still want to stay somewhat low fat in order to access our body fat break it down into ketones and use them for fuel instead of getting them from a dietary source. And again, the cool thing to recognize on the diet is that your body's still getting everything it needs in way of macronutrients, right? We're just not getting the calories or the fats from our plate. We're getting them from the freezer, right? The food stored the fat cells. We're able to access those. We're able to utilize those for fuel. And our body's utilizing those calories just like as if you were eating them off your plate. So a lot of men will lose up to 1 pound a day on the diet. So a pound's 3,600 calories. So if we're eating, 900, we're still getting another 2,600, right? Or we're actually getting another 3,600 from fat if we're losing 1 pound a day from our body. So we're actually breaking down a lot of body fat. You're running on a high fat diet on this protocol. It's just getting the fat from fat storage and not from dietary source. So again, as we transition out of the diet into maintenance and then beyond, one of the recommendations is to certainly up healthy fat intake. And again, this is because your body's been running on fat, been utilizing fat for fuel. It's become efficient at using fat for fuel. And this is a great segue into more of a healthy fat, moderate protein, low carbohydrate diet. So again, that's why we're not consuming a lot of fat during the protocol, is we are wanting to utilize body fat. And by manipulating our macros and our calories and utilizing the supplementation that we do, it allows us to, again, access body fat for fuel and use that. So what is MCT oil and what is the difference from coconut oil? So again, coconut oil and MCT oil. So MCT stands for medium chain triglyceride. So there's different lengths of carbon chains that make up a fatty acid. So anywhere from 6 to 8 is small chain, 8 to 12 is medium chain, 12 and up is a long chain. So MCTs are those 8 and 10s because they're made up of chains that have 8 carbons or 10 carbons in them. So meaning medium chain triglycerides, right? So that's what that is. Now, coconut oil has a little bit of MCTs in it, but tends to have what's called lauric acid, which is like a C12. And so it's actually a longer chain and has some benefits, especially antimicrobial benefits. But the C8s and the C10s are what's known as MCTs, and those get converted directly in the liver into energy and then get also converted into ketone bodies so that your body can use those. So coconut oil is okay on the diet to use for cooking and that. And then again, the MCT oil helps to provide some additional calories and additional energy and additional ketone production. So that's the difference between coconut oil and MCT. As coconut oil has some MCT in it, but tends to be longer chain triglycerides. And medium chain are kind of the ones we're after when we're on this protocol. So what is bulletproof coffee or fat coffee? So bulletproof coffee is kind of made popular by a gentleman named Dave Asprey, who runs a company called Bulletproof. And they do a coffee in which you add to your coffee, you add ghee and MCT oil, blend it and drink it, or grass-fed butter instead of the ghee, and you drink that. It just adds kind of an ability to add in some real healthy fats into your coffee and get them in without adding any additional macronutrients like proteins or carbohydrates. So Um, bulletproof coffee, while on the diet, you can't use the butter or the ghee. When we're in the maintenance phase or beyond, if that's something you like to do as that morning coffee with a little bit of that healthy fat, MCT, and ghee, butter, it's a great way to kind of, again, get some of that extra fat in your diet without raising insulin or adding extra carbohydrates or proteins in. And there's a couple different takes on that that you can find on YouTube, or if you have any questions, ask me. I'm not a coffee drinker, but I find the MCTs and the butter would have a lot of benefits cognitively and with staying satisfied in the morning, kind of helping you prolong your fast, as well as providing ketone bodies. So, why so much water intake? One, we want to make sure we're really hydrating ourselves. It helps with the elimination of fat, breakdown of fat. But the other thing is, when we go so low carbohydrate, our bodies tend to lose a lot of water. So for every gram of carbohydrate, your body will hold on to 3 to 4 grams of water. So when we stop consuming a lot of carbohydrates, typically our body flushes a lot of that water out and stops retaining it. So it's important that we make sure we kind of go a little heavy on the hydration side of things, just to make sure our bodies are getting plenty of water, staying hydrated. If you're having headaches, if you're not feeling the best, sometimes that's a sign of dehydration, and you really want to make sure you're getting at least a gallon a day. You know, men probably want to be closer to 1.5 gallons a day while on this protocol. And again, it's just making sure you're hydrated, making sure you're getting all the water replenished. It also, again, is going to be a great help with eliminating fat. The fat needs to get out through respiration, needs to get out through urination, through sweat, those kind of things. But we want to be breaking down body fat and getting rid of it. So activated charcoal, what's the benefits there? So a lot of times I'll suggest that you take some activated charcoal 1 to 2 times a week. And the reason for this is, over the years, your body tends to be exposed to a lot of toxins. These toxins can be in the environment, chemicals, fertilizers, just exposure to different toxins at different places, and medicines, vaccines, different things that you may have had exposure to. When your body has some of these toxins in, one of the places your body chooses to store this is in your fat cells, because it kind of can isolate it, get it out of the bloodstream without hurting any organs, that kind of stuff. So it'll store a lot of these toxins in body fat. So what happens when we start breaking down body fat is that the toxins then get re-released into the body. And in order for the body to eliminate the toxins, we need something for them to bind to, and then we can get rid of them. Otherwise, they get released, and then they get restored back in other fat cells. And so we want to take some activated charcoal once or twice a week, just to kind of bind those toxins, give them something to bind to, and then get rid of them. And so I would suggest, picking one day a week for sure. 2, if you've been exposed to a lot of toxins. If you've had anything like cancer treatments, chemotherapies, those kind of things, again, those toxins tend to get released when we break down body fat. And it's important to get those out of there. Get those out of there as quickly as possible. And that will help you to get healthy. And so we sell an activated charcoal here at the pharmacy. It's really good. But again, twice a week, I would suggest taking that. And again, take that at night, kind of away from your supplementation. On the night, you're going to take some activated charcoal, kind of move your supplementation up a little bit, give yourself a few hours, and then take the charcoal before going to bed. And that way you're not binding, also some of those good micronutrients that we want to have available for the body, and getting rid of those. So again, I would pick like Sunday night. I would, again, move my supplementation up a little bit so that I'm done by 6, 7 o'clock at night. And then by 9:30, getting ready for bed, that's when I would take my activated charcoal. And then again, when you get up in the morning and eliminate, you're getting rid of a lot of those toxins that have been released in your body. So again, that's a great protocol. I would recommend any of you on the diet to do that once a week if you've had a high exposure to toxins, twice a week. So let's see, how far are we in today? Not sure. So I think we're probably good for today. We got a few more questions, but I think we'll hold those on till next week. So again, any questions over the things we covered today? Macronutrients, micronutrients, alcohol, MCT, coconut oil, a bulletproof coffee, water intake, charcoal, activated charcoal. Shoot me a question. Be glad to answer it for you. Hope this helped. Hope this provided you with some knowledge and some resources on why we do this in the protocol. And I look forward to hearing from you. We'll talk to you later. Thanks, guys.